Excellent. Welcome, everybody, to another casual fireside chat with another excellent restaurant leader. I'm Abhinav Kapur, co-founder, CEO of Bikky. My pleasure to be joined today by Jessica Serrano, CMO of a little concept that you may have heard of before that is growing and getting a lot of great press, DIG. Jess, thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I would love for you to first kind of give your background and how you ended up at DIG. And then maybe tie that into the performance of the brand in 2024, and we'll use that to set the table for how you're investing ahead of 2025.
Sure. Yeah, I've always been in the food industry. Started my career in CPG. Spent quite a few years in the QSR space on brands like Taco Bell, Burger King, and so was really intrigued by moving to a concept like DIG. Just the quality of the food, the concept in its totality. And for those who aren't familiar, we have about 30 locations throughout the Northeast. All of the food is scratch cooked, very seasonal menu, and it's served in a market line. It's cooked in a French brigade style kitchen. So very different from the other concepts that I had worked on in the past. But I joined in 2022 at a time when the brand was really thinking about scale. And so that's what I have been focused on the last couple of years, is really taking this concept that had excellent product market fit to begin with in urban markets like New York, Boston, and really thinking about how to evolve it so that it can, expand into other markets and be relevant to as many people as possible.
Excellent. Yeah. And it's funny, you said 2022. I feel like most brands weren't thinking about scale in 2022 because they're still trying to recover from 2020 and 2021. But could you maybe walk us through the journey of 2022 you enter, and I believe 2024 has been a very good year. Maybe walk us through some of the foundational changes you had to make and then performance in 2024 specifically.
Yeah, so DIG is not unique in that 2020 and 21 were really challenging years for the business, and so 2022 was kind of like rising from the dust and going, right. Okay, like they hunkered down, they survived it, and so how do we now kind of rebuild this and take what we learned and now figure out how we scale from there. And so the reason 22 was such an interesting inflection point was because prior to COVID, given that the restaurants were concentrated in urban markets, it was all about office lunch. Right. And there was no shortage of people in Manhattan coming downstairs looking to get something really quickly and get back to their desk. And so in 2022, we kind of thought, well, maybe that's going to come back. And we started to see that it did, but not in the same way. So that meant like closing certain locations. And we started to see that kind of bell effect of people coming in Tuesday through Thursday, but no longer Monday, Friday. Now a snow day, people don't make it into the city. A 3-day weekend now becomes a whole weekend away from the office. And so we really had to think about not just a real estate strategy, but also the overall brand's position to be more relevant than we couldn't just survive off of office lunch in urban markets anymore. And so what does that mean then from a brand positioning standpoint? One of the things that I think the DIG team did a great job of was they taught people how to eat like dinner for lunch. Like DIG is, when you think about it compared to other concepts, is very hearty food. So for me as an outsider, it was kind of odd. Like, why don't people think about DIG for dinner? Yeah. And so that's been a lot of the evolution, is trying to be more relevant to dinner. And then as we've opened in suburban markets, the secondary target has emerged. So, our primary being the office professional, young and single. Well, what about these busy parents who have now like evolved into the next chapter, have moved out of the urban centers and into these suburban communities, and they're still looking to eat healthy, but now they're trying to do that times 4. Yeah. So it's been an evolution from a menu standpoint. Our channel mix has shifted quite a bit. So just trying to keep up with those market dynamics.
Yeah, I love that. And so I love this idea of, you were kind of like a lot of traditional fast casuals that started, call it in the mid 2010s, focused on office lunch. And now it's like, we were talking about this a couple days ago, where it's like pandemic happens, people are like, suburbs, that's kind of like the natural extension of where you got to go where the people are, essentially. And with that comes the opportunity to feed multiple people, not just like a single lunch occasion for a single person. Can you talk about how, I feel like new store expansion, you talked about a little bit, culinary, you talked about a little bit. If you were to sort of frame like the 2 to 3 growth pillars for next year, How would you describe those? And we can talk about some, the new store
Yeah.
opening stuff as a function of that.
Well, the first one probably sounds so obvious, but it's awareness.
Yeah.
And that really is because, well, we had this really great foundation of loyal DIG fans in the city. Many of those people have since moved on. I can't tell you how many people, I mean, we're having a remote conversation now, right? I can't tell you how many people I get on Zoom calls with and they go, I used to eat at DIG all the time. Now I live in North Carolina. I wish you would come to North Carolina. Well, like on a macro basis, that means then that the people that are in the city now, we're not experiencing our brand 5 years ago, so they may not have any reference point for it. So I think really focusing on the top of funnel and getting as many people to get DIG is the first one, and second to that is new growth, new market expansion, and then third would be culinary innovation. We have been really intentional about evolving our menu to be more relevant to more occasions.
Yeah. And so when you think about culinary innovation or new market expansion in the suburbs, again, going back to that theme of, a lot of fast casuals are moving into the suburbs, how do you think about your place in the guest's life, right? And how do you think about differentiation, competition? Because it feels like the suburbs are naturally going to become more competitive. So what do you do to stand out? What's the value prop? How do you build awareness? Maybe walk us through some of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good news is at the core, the product universally, it appeals to multiple audiences because what we really do is we give you, I like to say we cook what you would cook if you cooked.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole value prop, right? So if you are 25 and there's so many things you're supposed to do in a day now, right? You got to get up early and you got to meditate and then you got to be on at work and then there's the 9 to 5 and then there's the 5 to 9, right?
The second shift, 5 to 9.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so if that's your experience, the fact that that we actually hope that you cook. Like we love cooking. We want to inspire others to cook, and that's been a big part of our one of our brand pillars. But when you don't, we love that you can rely on us. And I think that's true whether a young professional or a family. And then, even our catering business has really boomed. And I think that is a reflection of while people have shifted to more remote and hybrid work, these offices are trying to figure out how to get people in. And again, our food, it's healthy, but it's tasty. And so it satisfies large swaths of people. So it's really been kind of the core of the brand's value prop, I think, appeals to lots of different use cases and life stages.
Yeah, that's great. And then what is an awareness building tactic then for you in the suburbs? So it sounds like moving more towards dinner, day part expansion, moving towards families and serving multiple people at once. What are the things that you feel like you're doing on the ground level to actually build that awareness with those communities?
There are really unsexy, old school proven tactics that are part of the plan, right? Like for anything from out of home to even like direct mail is super effective. But in general, what I find is getting people to eat the food is key. And so being really generous with that early on in communities. So we have put a lot of investment into field marketing. And so we do lots of events. One of the things that we found really successful, we call them office days, and we'll just invite an office and say, hey, on Wednesday, folks from XYZ office, we want you to come in and eat DIG. Maybe we'll do free, maybe we'll do 50% off. And we have been able to track those kinds of tactics in new markets and found that you'll see at least 20% repeat come within the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. And
great.
so
that's good ROI, because that was going to be my next question, is like, how do you actually measure the ROI of something like that? But so it's like how do you maybe walk us through actually tactically that funnel and that like conversion funnel? So it's like, are you getting people's email addresses? Are you getting their phone numbers? And then how are you recognizing when they come back, post opening, that getting to that return?
We've done a lot of trial and error with this. So we started doing these for walk-in, where we would reach we did this in Harvard Square as an example, where we tapped into the houses and we're like, hey, your house, it's your house, you're the Harvard House of the Week. Come in this week and you get a free bowl. And we saw really great redemption, but then we were like, because we were doing it walk-in, we didn't have a way to track it. So then we evolved to sending a note through email to our community and saying, nominate your office. And what we'd say, DM us. And then we get all these DMs. And we found that it was actually like a great lead generator, because then we got so many inbounds where like, fill out this Google form. And basically people were telling us like, this is my office, this is how many people are in it. These are the days we're in the office. These are the other brands that we eat at. We were like, whoa, this is like so much like great data ingestion. And so then from there, we started saying like, hey, here's a code for your office. And so we created them as digital. And that's how we were able to then track. So then it really helped. We're like, okay, all we're doing is, we're taking a hit on the food costs up front, but then I'm able to show the operator like, but look, it pays for itself within 6 weeks because these people tried it, they loved it. Now they're coming in and they're paying full price.
Yeah, I love that. So like just a very easy way to think about 6 week, like a campaign that generates incremental traffic, has a 6 week payback. And then I'm sure like 20% come back. Like even if half those people continue coming back for subsequent visits, like that's just pure incremental revenue for you at that location, basically. Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Something else we talked about, and this is sort of like you were telling me about roast chicken and how you cook the vegetables. Can you talk about how, from a culinary standpoint, what you're leaning into, how you feel like that differs from maybe the core DIG brand with the focus on vegetables, and how those two play apart with each other? Because you're doing this thing where it's like you're marketing the brand to a new audience in a new location, but you also get an opportunity to make the brand whatever you want it to be. I mean, obviously it has to be true to who you are, but you can actually make the brand whatever you want it to be to these people because they've never been to a DIG before. So maybe talk us through how you're doing that transition and how you're investing to achieve that transition.
Yeah, vegetables has always been really core to DIG's brand. But when we started opening in new markets, and I would go out and I talk to customers and, trying to explain the concept to them, and I would use this term like veg centric. And they're like, what does that mean? Does that mean it's vegan? Like people want to be like a box. And so what we found was that turned off certain people because then they thought it was just like a healthy place and that there wasn't going to be anything for them there. But as you know, it's like we've got mac and cheese, we have meatballs, and so that we realized that veg was maybe a little too narrow, and that veg is actually really great when we're talking to our existing customers because they already get the brand and they love when we update the menu and have new variety and experiences of vegetables. But the real acquisition driver is getting people in with the craveability of the protein. And so that's what we've been focusing on from like in terms of thinking about different parts of the menu across the funnel. So now if I'm doing out of home or if I'm doing direct mail, I'm leaning into the protein. And then once I get you in the door with that, then you're going to try the broccoli and carrots and realize like, oh, wow, these actually are good. They're not like, people have these associations with those kinds of vegetables because they can be quite bland if they're not prepared well. And so that has really served us well, is thinking about protein innovation as kind of an acquisition driver, and then vegetables and the other parts of the menu as like frequency drivers with existing and loyal customers.
Yeah, I love the way you framed it. Something you said there was thinking about the menu at different parts of the funnel. And I feel like not a lot of people actually break it down to that level where they can have that level of insight of something that gets somebody, like whatever the brand is, the thing that gets someone in the door doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing as the thing that gets them to keep coming back. Right.
100%.
And it's like the thing that gets them in the first time can be one item. And then there are levers you can pull on the menu because of how diverse the menu is, because of how rich it is, because of the way you market it, those items individually, that can drive attachment, that can drive frequency, and then, of course, can drive average check and sales and traffic. So I love the way you frame that. And I think I said this to you tongue-in-cheek a couple of days ago, but it sounds like Boston Market 2.0 is kind of like the pitch here, at least in the suburban stores. I mean, maybe talk, I'd say that was the same smile you when I said it a couple of days ago. So maybe talk to us in the last couple of minutes here about how you think about brand positioning and, is that appropriate? Is that what you actually want to achieve?
Yeah, it's hilarious you say that because I have seen people refer to DIG as like a fancy Boston Market. And I think what they're saying is, Boston Market built itself off of like rotisserie chicken and sides like broccolis and vegetables. And so I love that people qualify that as when they say fancier. I think we have really taken that experience to the next level, culinarily speaking.
Yeah.
And so I'm not offended by that. I think in a lot of ways that, that is where we're taking the brand, is that we want to be considered the place that has your back when you're trying to put a meal on the table, whether it's for yourself at lunch or for an office or for your family. And so that's where we're headed. And I think some of the proof points of that you'll see is in our socials. So we really put our chefs right at the forefront, kind of employee generated content. I think, there have been some brands that, like, I think, they've fired employees for shooting content back of house, and we have the exact opposite attitude around it. Is we're really proud of how much love and effort goes into the food that we cook, and so that's really central to the story we're telling. Historically, we spent a lot of time talking about how we got the vegetables to the back door, but now we're really focused on like telling you what we're doing with those ingredients once they're in our restaurants. And we hope by like really showing everything that it either inspires you to be a little bit more confident in the kitchen or let us do it for you.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I'm going to break my rule here and go longer than 15 minutes a little bit because I feel like we're having a good conversation. Can you talk about one non-obvious place where you feel like you're investing in your team to achieve some of this growth next year?
Yes, business development, which was not on my bingo card. I don't think I would have thought that when I joined DIG. But what I quickly learned was that catering, if you think about it in the tech sense, like you'll relate to this. Like we've had a B2C business forever, but we actually have a B2B business because we're
Right.
talking to universities, corporations. It's a much higher involvement decision for them. You come into a DIG, you're spending $15-$20. They're spending, $500 a transaction, tens of thousands of dollars a year on catered services. And so I realized that we needed a whole different kind of customer journey, and that business development was key to that. So have built out a team of field marketing / business development folks that use a whole different suite of tools, HubSpot, email sequencing, really thinking about the longitudinal lifetime value of these B2B corporate catering customers, and it has definitely paid for itself.
Yeah.
I think smaller brands, there are lots of companies out there that you can like outsource that and, consultants, et cetera. But we were at an inflection point where it made sense to make that investment internally and feel really great about it.
Yeah. How, if you're willing to share, or at least directionally, like how big is catering as a percentage of your business right now? So give people a guidepost of when the right time is to invest in sort of like a biz dev person. And then where do you think, like, what's the ceiling for it for next year? Where does it go next year?
It's double digits.
Okay.
And I would say that's the inflection point. Once if your catering business is 10%, like then you have a business worth, investing resources in. I honestly think the ceiling, there's still a lot of room on catering. So definitely don't feel like we've hit. I mean, Thanksgiving was an indicator. Last year we had a fantastic Thanksgiving, and everyone said to me, "Are you going to lap it?" And we blew it out of the waters again.
Amazing.
Yeah. So feeling like there's a lot of upside still on catering.
Excellent. And then last thing here, just to sort of like give you your flowers a little bit, like I feel like the role of the CMO has changed so much in the restaurant business over the last few years, where it's like tech and marketing. Like marketing was very brand oriented, and tech was very, honestly, like nuts and bolts and networking and in-store systems oriented. And I feel like what you've done really well, and I feel like what the best CMOs do, is they blend marketing and tech, and they drive this level of collaboration within the organization, where now like marketing has a role in culinary, marketing has a role in technology, marketing has a role in operations. Because at the end of the day, marketing is responsible not for brand building, but is responsible for growth, full stop. And I feel like you've really owned that well. Can you talk a little bit about next year? Where do you feel like you need to do deeper collaboration with the other teams cross-functionally to achieve the ambitious growth goals that you have and invest in some of these pillars that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for saying that. I totally agree with you that the role has evolved. I think people used to think about marketing as an expense, and it's not going to cut it. You have to be a revenue driving part of the business, and that's why internally we don't even really call ourselves the marketing team. We call ourselves the growth team because that's our accountability. And so while I think we've made a lot of strides, we do still have a lot of opportunity. And for me, tech is definitely the biggest one. Is, to your point, like, I think it's easy for tech to be like seen as an enabler, but in a lot of ways we're looking at it as a much more blended, like how can tech really drive growth? And so we're really looking to work much more integrated in terms of thinking about, aligning on what those North Stars are. So if it's LTV, and then really thinking about like, do we have the right digital experience to drive
Right.
guest frequency and check? So feeling really optimistic about continuing to drive more cohesion between the tech and quote unquote marketing world.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks again, Jess, for going a little bit longer and engaging in the dialogue. If you're tuning into this live, thanks so much for being here. If you're watching the stream, thank you as well. Appreciate it. And yeah, everybody, if we don't see you, have a great holiday. Thanks again, Jess.
It's been fun.